too funny. Hello and welcome to the Public Works and Finance Committee meeting of Monday, December 9th. I will not say good morning because it is good afternoon. First item on our agenda is approval of the committee meeting minutes from September 9th. Thank you, Lori, for capturing them. I had no concerns.
No, I was reading those. I was like, man, this was 2 months ago. Solidly.
Yeah.
I'd asked Lori twice.
Yeah.
We did have 2 cancellations.
So we're comfortable recommending approval of the minutes.
Indeed.
Love it. Item number 2 is the disbursement report from November 2024 with Sarah Decker. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. All right, so looking at the accounts payable report for month ending November 30th, 2024, total expenditures were $3,535,175.01. Payroll was the largest expenditure. That was $1,771,178. I do have 4 payments to point out. We made a payment towards our radio system project, which was $166,525.13. We made our 2024 annual workers' comp payment to State Insurance Fund for $224,260. We made a payment towards our first DEQ loan, and that was $134,111.04. And we made a payment towards the 2024 A Street reconstruction project, and that was $101,205.40.
I love it. The only thing I was going to see, because Bryce, this may be the first time that you've seen some of the DEQ.
That's what I was just going to ask
loans.
about.
And I don't know if you both want to share, like,
Yeah, I can help.
how the reason we go with the state for those loan programs and what we benefit from using those instead of trying to go private. Or
So in brief, reaching back, this is now goes back to about 2014. When the city updated the water system comp plan, we identified some deficiencies, regulatory deficiencies in the system that were related to water production. So we could not, at that point in time, take our highest producing well offline and meet peak demands, and that's a requirement under DEQ. We also had several areas of the city's boosted water systems. So these are kind of the higher elevations in town that those booster stations were not sized adequately to provide fire flow during those fire events. It was largely sized towards domestic demands. And so we did seek and receive judicial confirmation to incur debt to rectify those items. The DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, administers the state revolving loan fund, which are low interest loans for water and sewer utility system improvements. We applied for $4.3 million in 2015. We did receive that.
In 2015.
Yep. And then it took us a few years to get that project closed out. I think it probably ended up getting closed out around 2019, if I recall. At that time, cost had escalated, so we did receive and request an additional $4.3 million from the state revolving loan fund and received that as well. That loan we just closed out. As you recall, we just passed the bond ordinances earlier this year for that second one. So that is the first loan. We will start paying debt service on the second this spring.
In May.
Is it May? Yeah.
Mhm.
Will be our first payment on that second loan. But this is that opportunity for those kind of one-time large expenses to be able to incur debt that helps us smooth off the, without having to save up quite as much or to increase rates dramatically, allows us to do it. And I think we were 2.25% interest, if I recall correctly. So they're
it was like
Yeah.
low interest
Structure, yeah.
long-term loans. So they're very advantageous, and a lot of communities take advantage of those if they're able to for needed water and sewer system improvements.
Cool. That was, yeah, when I was reviewing that was just the only one that kind of stood out. So I appreciate you bringing our attention to it and
Yeah.
letting me ask some questions.
And I was just going to add, so DEQ is the state entity that is trusted with carrying out all the federal guidance. Other states will have environmental agencies that pass additional regulation. Idaho's threshold for what DEQ carries out is just not just, but NEPA. So yeah, they're a great agency to work with from everything I've heard, and I'm glad they've got this grant program and are a state agency that's looking to not further hinder the local taxpayers who are trying to make sure their municipalities have what they need to have their water turn on and their toilets flush and all that good stuff. Any other questions? Oh, and I'm happy to speak to, thank you for helping with the Smart Transit invoices. We had some leadership changeover at Smart Transit. I'm the city's member of the board of directors for Smart Transit, and that will not be happening again. So thank you for your help getting everything buttoned up for fiscal year Because I think they've,
25?
yeah, well, they,
It was the last payment of FY '24 and the first
24.
payment of
Oh, oh,
25.
so yes. That's what I got. Any other questions? Okay, groovy.
Approve.
I'm comfortable recommending approval. Okay, love it. Thank you, Sarah.
Great,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Item number 3 is city limits ordinance with Scott Bontrager. Welcome, Scott.
The first of moving things.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. So underneath Idaho State Code, more specifically Section 63-215, requires the taxing district to file a new legal description map reflecting any changes in their boundary over the previous year. This is required to occur by January 10th of each year. And in our case, the boundary was adjusted through 3 separate annexations this year. So I have a PowerPoint just kind of reminding which ones those were. We got the Pine View subdivision on the northeast side of town, the Wild Rose Court subdivision on the east side, and the South Moscow Business District, also known as SOMO, on the south side. So just a quick look back. Pine View subdivision, that one was annexed to May 6, 2024, or 22.93 acres. Wild Rose Court subdivision was annexed on the same day of 2.53 acres. And South Moscow Business District was annexed just recently back in October with 51.53 acres. So in total, those annexations added up to roughly 77 acres to the city, bringing the total acreage now to the city at 4,836 acres. And this is illustrated in a map and legal description that's included in the ordinance in your packet. I believe this has to go to, as an ordinance, go to full.
Correct.
Yeah, it can't be on consent. Any questions, thoughts?
Nope, I was happy that it all made sense.
Yeah. Go for it.
It was very easy to follow.
Yes, true.
Yeah, so
Well, the legal descriptions.
That's the first time I've heard it.
like
Yeah.
like it was easy to follow in this small
The-
small quantity
yeah.
of annexation.
Yes,
Right.
yes. My only question was going to be, is it the state code? It allows us to go up to no later than the 10th day of the next January. It's not like within 30 days of the annexation, right? It's not
Correct.
whatever comes
Yep.
sooner.
Once a year, end of the year, is when we
Great.
do that. Yeah.
Love it. And that means they will be formally, well, I guess they've already been annexed, and so they're already in the tax base. And so this is just making sure that our records match what we intend to do. Okay. How do we feel about recommending approval of the ordinance?
I would love to recommend.
Love it. Love it. And this, because it's an ordinance, would be on full agenda.
Correct.
Okay, groovy. That sounds great. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. Item number 4, task order number 1, City of Moscow Palouse Mall. Didn't they just rebrand? Or can you still call it the Palouse Mall? I'm still calling it Palouse
It's here
Place.
right in our headline.
Great. I'm calling it the Palouse Mall because their radio jingle will forever be in my brain. Palouse Mall Lift Station Rehabilitation Project with Evan Timar. Welcome.
Welcome. Good afternoon. Alrighty. So yeah, we have a task order that would be to work with Ardura Group for design phase services for the Palouse Mall lift station. So we'll jump into the presentation here. The vicinity of the Palouse Mall lift station is towards the southwest corner of their lot. It pumps nearly 400 feet across the highway with a hydraulic grade of roughly 32 feet. So it's a fairly short run. It serves an area of about 300 acres. It's generally the apartments off of Baker and A Street, and then some of the commercial businesses on the properties north of the Pullman Highway. So the existing conditions that we're currently sitting with, we have roughly an 800 square foot footprint for this station. So it's fairly small. And the station currently consists of a wet well, which is this right here, this tank. And then it has a dry well right over here. And this is a picture of the dry well looking down. It's roughly 19 feet deep, and it has about a 6-foot diameter down towards the bottom. That's where the pumps are located. These designs have generally not been incorporated in newer lift station designs because they're kind of a maintenance headache.
bet.
And then, and so the station has had, I'll go over some of the upgrades that we've gone through. It was originally constructed in 1976. The electrical upgrades were upgraded in 97, so roughly 20 years later. Wet well modifications were performed in 2009, which you see the older eccentric cone sitting on the top of the wet well. So it was expanded with a larger barrel just to give it a little bit more capacity. And again, yeah, it pumps sewage about 36 feet in elevation. In the design, what most lift stations are transitioning to are what's located over here, where you have the pumps, instead of sitting in a dry well, they're sitting at the bottom of the wet well. Then you can pull them up on a guide rail system to be able to then service them from up above. So you don't have to do a confined space entry to work down and lower a 400-pound motor and a 500-pound pump unit. And then you have a smaller dry pit with valve vaults and flow meters inside of it. And so we would be rehabilitating what is the existing wet well out at that location, aiming to eliminate the dry well pumping station component, installing submersible pumps and new electrical controls as well.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
Do you already have something like that in, or will this be the first one?
Yeah, so we do. The newest Eddington lift station is like that. Our South lift station as well, and our Orchard lift station are all the very similar configurations, as well as the new Logos lift station. And we have this lift station with this wet and dry well configuration at the mall, and a Southeast sewer lift station that is the same type of configuration.
Yeah, and the same thing with the company that helped or worked with the team on the Eddington lift station is basically the same consultant that's working on this one. And we set up a master agreement with them last March that they had signed for this. This is the first task order we've actually done with them. So kind of the breakout of what they have going on here is the base design kind of covers only a certain portion of it here. That's pretty much attacking everything that's related to the wet well and the stuff that we know has to be replaced. Then as part of it, there's alternative design items that we really don't know whether we're going to have to do it or not until we get in about 30% design. So we've added in for them to have that there for the just in case we get into it. The overall budget that we have for design on this was $315,000. Right now, this was at about $215,000 if they used all the alternates, but if not, I mean, as low as $138,000, depending on what we need to do. So it's actually pretty fair priced for the budget that we have for this.
And since we signed a master agreement, I'm guessing this isn't a surprise. This is one of the ongoing maintenance things where we're fixing it before we need to actually panic. Yeah.
Yeah, this is part of the capital improvement plan.
Love it. What does an outage look like? Not in terms of if it fails before this is done, but I'm thinking as far as the other examples you gave, I guess, other than the south one, most of them would be new where you're not necessarily having residents on the other side. What does the changeover process look like? Is it going to be them all having to, what happens if they flush and it's not?
Yeah.
And I guess to add on to that, and one of my questions that I feel like is natural to add on to this, with the addition of Home Depot, does that also increase, capacity and worry potentially? Because that's a big infrastructure, that's adding to that piece of property.
Yeah, I think so. In general, an outage, that station does have backup power in cases as far as power outages are concerned. That's actually connected to our reclamation facility, so it runs off of that emergency power system. But when the station does fail, which it has, we generally have a fair amount of buffer time just within the system to assure that we're not overflowing with
Cool.
sanitary sewage on the ground. But we do have to put in place, we've installed bypass pumping to get across
Like
the
flip the
highway.
switch so
and
that it
get-
can go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So ensuring that we run bypassing systems in place. And then if those fail, having our pumping trucks to pump the sewage and calling in additional pumping services to help pump because you can't do anything until you can get those pumps back up and going or the force main back and intact. And so, yeah, those things do happen where just something happens, a pipe blows and floods the motors, and then you lost your motors and you have to
Yeah.
de-water everything.
It's
and,
an actual mess.
and so this station, believe it or not, sees our higher flows
Yeah.
as far as lift stations are concerned. So it's quite a bit of sewage going to it.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the map of the footprint
Yep.
real quick? Because my next question being, so behind the
Home Depot.
nope.
Uh,
So even,
Warbonnet?
yeah, so the smaller development that's
Mm.
being discussed or underway that we approved
Yeah.
behind Warbonnet, beyond Warbonnet, and then also, I was pretty sure that parcel extending on Baker sold
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
is
yeah,
out,
there's-
it's in outside city limits, in city limits.
That's in
right
city limits. This Peterson second edition was platted over a decade ago.
now? And I'm just thinking as far as those additional, I mean, are both of those new housing developments, is that all comes right down to that little linchpin right there
Yeah,
when it's
yeah.
all, okay.
It will all flow down to that station.
Topographically, I guess it makes sense, so.
Those figures are, for the most part, plugged into
Cool.
our comp plan and to assure that we're going to meet the capacity demands that are placed upon it in the future, especially the 50-year planning period. And so that's why some of the potential modifications of rehabilitating the existing wet well, making it potentially larger to just ensure
Accommodate.
that we're putting the appropriate pumps in place and they have the correct amount of cycles on them
Cool.
as well. But yeah.
And it's really that residential development that drives that loading. A development like Home Depot will have very minimal loading to the sewer system because you just have some restrooms that get used occasionally. They're not, restaurants or residential uses are going to be your large contributors, or you could have some industrial user that would have a large demand, but really it's going to be that residential that drives most of that, or food service.
And so what is, assuming we are feeling on board with recommending this agreement acceptance, are you going to try and do it when students are gone? Like, is this something, what's the runway look like for
I think
the consultant?
ideally, it will take them likely all of FY25
Okay.
to design. We will need to bypass this system, and it's a little bit more complex than a normal station because we have two routes going into the wet well. And so it will kind of have a dual bypass system set up. We would generally want to avoid wet weather conditions.
Yeah.
So preferably a summer install of this system.
Cool.
But yeah, it will be a little bit more complicated to rehabilitate an active station, but it is done all the time.
Cool.
It's very, very common.
Cool.
And that'll become the contractor's responsibility during the course of construction to set up the bypass, maintain it. That'll be built into their bid. Construction may not be till 26 or 27, so it's probably going to be down the road a little bit. But that'll be covered during the course of construction.
Cool.
And so for that, just so I'm clear on what we're aimed at approving here, is because the bid will be different than the 200
Yeah.
than you're suggesting today, right? So I just want to.
It's just design services to get the project designed so we can put it out to bid.
Okay, got it.
Got it. Okay.
And is that reflective of other projects of this nature? Like, is that pretty standard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, typically for percentage wise, it's usually somewhere in that 10 to 15% of the estimated construction costs. This is right there, if not a little bit less.
Okay, great.
So we've got
Thanks.
contingencies built into this depending upon what other things may we have to, when we get into it.
Sure. Cool. Thank you.
And I was just going to add for our avid viewers at home that are clearly watching en masse online, the wastewater facility is really cool. I don't know if you've been able to tour yet, but I always love pointing out that doesn't stink. It's the dairy stalls behind when you want.
Stink. They just showcase our agricultural roots.
I like it. I like it.
Really good
Yes.
reframe.
Yeah, that's the positive spin. I hate it. Cool.
So staff recommendation, staff recommends acceptance of the agreement in the amount of $215,114 or provide us with further direction.
I think that's good direction.
I think it's great direction, and I am knowing that we had the city shop come in over where we were expecting. I'm somewhat comforted to hear that our current ballpark is about 100,000 less than we were thinking. So
Worst case condition, still.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right, right.
right,
Let's not
Yeah,
celebrate
sorry.
just yet. We're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
start-
yeah.
We're just getting out the gate with the design.
You're right. You're right.
Let's give it some time.
We got
Fair
one
enough.
project under budget, the
Yeah.
IPS pump, so that's good.
Yep, that's
I
good.
like it.
That can go on consent, yeah?
It can.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna ask if we wanted to bring it full to council just on the heels of our last discussion, just to make sure that everybody's in.
I really
the same-
don't.
All right.
That's just me. Haley
What's
might want
on 16?
It's honestly, it'll be a relatively light agenda coming up on the 16th. That's my expectation.
I mean,
I mean, I feel good.
I
but
feel good
just-
either way. I also think in terms of, I'm kind of with Bryce on this because there are less glamorous things in the CIP that the capital improvement plan that I wish more people were excited about. And it's not fun. I never expected to be this interested in learning about pump stations. But once you're on the side of the desk, it's pretty fun. And so I don't know if that's the same case for viewers at home.
The only kind of more significant item we'll have on the 16th will be the report on the East City Park Stage
Okay.
project.
We would see this again after
When it comes time for construction,
for the construction
So,
piece.
so a while from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
probably a year to 18 months.
to.
I'm neutral.
With
If
that,
you're-
with that, I would just advocate again. I won't even thumb wrestle over it, but it's going to come up again later. We're going to have not a better presentation because this was lovely, but probably a more significant
Numbers.
presentation because
Yeah.
it's closer to when it's going to happen. So I think it's great that we get this ball rolling
Sure.
instead of people going, "Hey, you had that one thing. When's it going to happen?"
Yeah,
Right.
logically, the next thing you'll see is the CIP as it comes forward for the next, probably won't change much for the upcoming fiscal year, but as we get the design complete, the cost estimate, CIP we'd update in the budget, you'd see the budget expenditure in the sewer capital fund when we're getting close to construction, and then you'd get the report once bids have been opened and asking you to accept the bid.
And I guess with that end, I mean, if somebody wants to pull it off consent, they can too.
Yeah.
So
I'm like
Yeah.
so middle of the pack on
Let's
this one.
wait.
So how do you
Let's
feel?
put it on consent and wait.
You're okay with
Yeah,
consent?
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will put it on consent with a recommend to approve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.
thank you.
But expect
Thanks,
to come back
guys.
next time around.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts, feelings, emotions, jokes before we adjourn?
I still, when it came back up about SOMO,
Yeah.
I'm still like, okay, yeah, that's
It's
funny.
you got to lean into it. We're
That's
going to have to
funny.
all lean into it.
That's funny. Yeah,
South Moscow.
yeah, South
Business
Moscow,
Park.
SOMO.
I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, then
So North Moscow would be NOMO.
No mo.
No mo. No mo.
No mo. We going SOMO.
I like
Because
it.
he has soda.
Yeah.
Or what about, I'm waiting for emo.
Emo.
Easter,
Ooh, nice.
yeah.
Nice.
With that, we are adjourned at 4:22. Thank you.